"Are you insane? You'll die in there." That's what someone yelled as he disappeared into the flames. But they were wrong. He wasn't reckless. He was trained. Every step he took, every breath through the smoke was instinct, sharpened by war, refined in chaos. For years, he lived in silence, just the quiet man who fixed cars and kept to himself. No one knew what he'd seen. No one knew what he could do. But when fire came, when seconds meant life or death, he moved. Not like a hero, but like a soldier who never forgot how to survive. Welcome to Grateful Stories, where tales of compassion and kindness are told. Let's uncover what really happened. Joshua Brown rarely spoke unless it was absolutely necessary. In the quiet edges of a small town just outside Houston, he was the man people saw but never really knew. Most just called him Josh from the garage, the one who could fix anything with an engine and didn't charge more than he had to. He lived alone in a weathered one-story house at the end of a gravel road, where oak trees leaned low and the wind carried the hum of cicadas. The garage, more like a barn with metal siding, smelled of oil, rust, and old memories. Josh kept it clean enough to work, but cluttered enough to feel like a fortress. At 40, he moved like someone who had already seen too much. His eyes were heavy, quiet, always scanning, even when he pretended not to notice. When townsfolk tried to make conversation, especially about the military, Josh would simply shake his head and say, "I'm just a regular guy." He never joined the veterans' breakfast at the diner or showed up to 4th of July parades. He didn't wear caps, pins, or jackets that told any stories. What they didn't know was that in 2007, Josh had dragged 3 wounded men out of a burning Humvee in Mosul. Only one had survived. He hadn't worn a uniform since. That Thursday afternoon in late July, the air in the town of Bellbrook was thick and still. Josh was under the hood of a '92 Silverado, wiping grease from his knuckles when he caught a sharp scent in the air. Not oil, smoke, something wrong. He stood upright slowly, like a man waking from a long sleep. Then he heard it, the high-pitched scream of a child, carried faintly on the wind. Another second passed before a distant shout followed, urgent and panicked. Josh stepped outside, wiping his hands absently on his rag. Beyond the houses and over the ridge of sycamore trees, a black column of smoke coiled into the sky, fat and rising fast. It was coming from the Carter house. He recognized the place. Sarah Carter, the single mother who'd moved in 2 years ago with her kids, Emma and Liam. Emma liked to draw flowers with chalk on the sidewalk. Liam had a habit of waving at passing trucks like they were parades. Josh had fixed her car once, a simple brake line job, refused payment. Sarah had left a peach cobbler on his porch in return. He never ate it, but kept the dish. Josh stood there longer than he should have. The scream echoed again, sharper this time. His heart kicked. His first instinct was to shut the garage door and pretend he hadn't heard a thing. His breathing quickened. The noise, the smoke, the faint pop of something combusting it all blurred into one sick memory. Iraq. The alley with the IED. The screams of men under fire. No, he muttered to himself. This isn't that. But the heat behind his ribs kept rising. He walked toward the road, past the line of hedges that marked his property. That's when he saw them. A crowd of neighbors had formed halfway down the street. Some were on their phones, others just frozen in place. From where he stood, he could see the flames licking through the lower windows of the Carter home. Smoke boiled out from every seam. The roof shingles were darkening fast. The fire department hadn't arrived yet. Sirens were still a distant wail, buried behind hills and intersections. Josh stayed at the edge of the scene, just far enough to stay invisible. He scanned the house front door, engulfed. Too dangerous. A second-story window shattered as he watched, spraying glints of glass into the yard. The screams had stopped. That was worse. He looked around. No one was moving in. A man in a polo shirt tried to dart forward but reeled back, shielding his face from the heat. Someone else shouted, "Call 911 again." Another said, "There are kids in there." Right. Josh's fingers curled around the wrench still in his back pocket. His jaw tightened. He took one long breath. "No, this isn't your fight," he whispered. But it was already too late. That old muscle in his brain, the one that didn't ask permission, had already taken over. He dropped the wrench into the grass, rolled his sleeves back, and began to move. Not fast, not frantic, controlled, efficient. One of the neighbors tried to stop him. "Hey, don't go near that place, man. It's coming down." Josh didn't even glance at him. His eyes were locked on the back of the house. He knew from memory that there was a rear entrance, probably the kitchen. It had a narrow patio and a door that stuck on humid days. If the kids were upstairs, it was the only chance. As he moved past the hedge line and into the outer heat of the blaze, his mind shifted. Not to panic, not to fear, but to precision. Every second mattered now. Inside, something old and dormant had reawakened. Not rage, not heroism. Something colder, something clearer. He heard another cry, high and thin, cutting through the smoke like a radio signal barely tuned in. He clenched his jaw and picked up speed. Whatever this day was supposed to be quiet, ordinary, it was already gone. The fire was his now, and somewhere inside it, so were they. Josh moved toward the Carter house, his boots pressing into the dry grass, the wrench still clenched in his right hand. The heat in the air had changed. It wasn't the Texas sun anymore. It was the kind of heat that choked you before you even got close. 50 meters ahead, neighbors had gathered along the edge of the street, forming a half circle of hesitation. Nobody crossed the line. They pointed, they shouted, but they didn't move. Flames had already climbed halfway up the front of the house, chewing through the wooden siding with terrifying speed. Smoke poured out the broken windows in thick, black waves, billowing into the sky like a signal flare that no one knew how to answer. Someone yelled, "Where's the fire truck?" Another voice answered, "It's coming. They said it's less than 5 minutes out." Too long. Josh knew it. In 5 minutes, the second floor could be gone. He stopped just short of the crowd, watching. A man in a red Houston Astros shirt was on the phone with 911, pacing in tight circles. Another neighbor, a teenager, held up his phone to record. The screen reflected the fire's glow. A loud pop rang out, metal on metal, or maybe a small explosion from inside the house. The crowd gasped and stepped back as a window burst outward, glass flying like shrapnel across the lawn. The heat rolled over them in a wave. "I think there's a gas line in there," someone shouted. "Jesus," another whispered. "Are the kids still inside?" Josh didn't speak. He just stared, jaw locked, the wrench still gripped tightly. The garage door to the Carter home had melted inward. The front steps were on fire now, the banister collapsing in slow, dramatic jerks. A plastic tricycle sat nearby, already half melted. Then came the scream. A child's voice, high and panicked, from somewhere upstairs. It wasn't long, but it was real. Everyone heard it. For a moment, the entire street fell into silence. Josh's knuckles turned white around the wrench. His pulse hit harder. The smell of smoke was different now, drier, closer, wrapped in fear. He took one step forward. "You can't go in there," someone yelled from behind him. "It's not safe, man." But that didn't matter. Safety wasn't part of the equation anymore. Josh took another step. His eyes scanned the structure like a soldier reading terrain. The front was lost, too exposed, too hot. The side windows were narrow, too high to reach without a ladder. That left the back. He'd remembered seeing a door there once, half stuck from humidity, but workable. Another pop rang out, followed by a flicker of flame that ran along the porch roof like a fuse being lit. Josh closed his eyes just for a second. He saw a different fire, one from years ago. Mosul. The Humvee flipped, its tires still spinning in the dirt. One soldier pinned beneath, another screaming, and the flames growing taller. He had moved then, too. He opened his eyes. "Don't be a hero," he whispered to himself. "That's not who you are." But the scream came again, softer now, but pleading. That was enough. Josh dropped the wrench. It landed with a soft thud in the grass. Then he stepped forward past the line of neighbors, past the edge of safety, past the point of no return. Nobody tried to stop him. They just watched as he broke into a jog, his boots pounding harder against the ground. Behind him, a woman's voice cracked. "I think Sarah's still in there." With the kids, Josh didn't look back. The side yard was narrow, weeds brushing his jeans as he cut through. The air here was thicker, smoke drifting low and gray. He could see the flames reflecting in the neighbors' car windows, flickering like something alive. He rounded the corner to the back of the house and found the door exactly where he remembered. It was half covered by a toppled folding table and a stack of collapsed cardboard boxes. The door itself was blackened, the handle already beginning to warp from heat. He kicked the table aside, ignoring the sting in his leg as something sharp scraped through denim. Then, bracing his shoulder, he rammed the door once, twice, and it cracked open on the third hit. Inside was worse than he imagined. Smoke blanketed the air like a living thing. It stung his eyes instantly, filling his lungs with the bite of burning insulation and plastic. He dropped low, remembering his training. Crawl. Stay beneath the smoke line. He tore off his shirt and soaked it in the kitchen sink, still dripping from a broken pipe. Then he tied it across his mouth and nose, breathing through the wet cloth. The kitchen floor was hot under his hands. The fire hadn't reached this room yet, but it would. Fast. Above him, another bang, something collapsing upstairs. Josh moved fast, staying low, one hand brushing the wall to stay oriented. The main stairs were in front, but the heat pouring from that hallway was like an oven. He changed direction, heading toward the laundry room, where he remembered a second set of narrow stairs, ones rarely used, probably cluttered, but maybe still intact. The door was stuck. Josh backed up, then slammed into it with his shoulder. Pain shot through his arm, but the door gave way, crashing open into a pile of boxes and old coats. He shoved them aside and began to climb one step at a time. Knees bent, chest low. His legs remembered this posture, not from stairs, but from war zones, from climbing over rubble in bombed-out homes, searching for wounded. The muscle memory was terrifyingly intact. At the top, the smoke was even thicker. But there were voices now. A child sobbing, a faint, choked cough. He turned left toward the hallway. The carpet burned beneath his feet. The paint on the walls bubbled and blistered. There, a shape on the floor. Josh rushed forward, dropping to his knees beside a woman, Sarah. She was unconscious, one arm wrapped tightly around a small boy. Liam. He pressed his fingers to her neck. Pulse weak, but there. The boy stirred, eyes red, barely aware. Josh didn't think. He hoisted Sarah over his shoulder in one motion, years of muscle memory taking over. Then he bent, scooped Liam into the crook of his other arm, and turned back toward the stairs. As he descended, the ceiling above groaned. The fire was hunting them now. Every second mattered. Josh didn't flinch. He just moved. And behind him, the hall began to burn. The hallway was collapsing behind him. Josh descended the narrow staircase 2 steps at a time, Sarah over one shoulder. Liam clutched tight in his arm. Smoke wrapped around them like a living thing, pressing in from every side. The wooden railing cracked under heat. The wall to his left glowed faint orange. The moment his boots hit the kitchen floor, he pivoted fast. He kept his head low, shoulders crouched, muscles tight. His lungs burned, even through the soaked shirt tied across his mouth. He burst through the back door and into blinding daylight. Heat followed him like a wave, sweeping into the open air as if the fire was chasing him out. The crowd gasped. He didn't slow. He carried Sarah and Liam across the yard like a soldier under fire, moving fast but steady. His boots left deep prints in the dirt. Sweat poured off his face in streaks of ash and soot. "Call the paramedics," someone shouted. Josh lowered Sarah gently onto the grass beneath a tree, shaded from the worst of the sun. Liam whimpered and tried to sit up. Josh knelt, checked Sarah's pulse again. then looked the boy in the eye. "You're safe now," he said, voice raspy. Then he heard it. Another cry, thin, muffled. It came from inside the house. Upstairs. Another room. "Emma!" He turned back toward the burning house without hesitation. Someone grabbed his arm. "You already got them out. Don't go back in." Josh didn't answer. His eyes were locked on the upper floor. A second-story window had blown out moments before. Black smoke now poured from it in thick columns. Pieces of flaming insulation floated down like cursed snow. He pulled away, re-entering the back door like a shadow diving into hell. Inside, the conditions were worse. Flames were everywhere now, reaching the kitchen walls, licking up toward the ceiling. The air was suffocating. Every breath felt like inhaling knives. Josh moved fast, retracing his steps toward the stairs. But the hallway was already gone. Flames had overtaken the path he'd used just minutes before. He needed another route. He crouched low and cut through the laundry room, smoke swirling around him. A beam overhead cracked. Sparks showered down. The temperature had climbed past the point of pain. His skin screamed, but his mind stayed locked. He found the narrow service stairs again. This time, they groaned underfoot, the supports weakening from heat. He ascended faster than before, legs pumping like pistons, sweat dripping into his eyes. At the top, the hallway was barely holding. The floor creaked with every step. A door hung open to the right. He moved toward it. "Emma," he called, voice hoarse. "Emma, can you hear me?" A faint sob answered him. Josh pushed forward, one arm across his face. He reached the bathroom, small, tile-lined, miraculously untouched by flames. Smoke curled in from the hallway, but the room had been partially shielded. Inside, Emma sat curled in the corner, clutching a stuffed bear to her chest. Her face was streaked with soot, her eyes wide and red. "I'm here," Josh said softly. She didn't move. "I'm a friend. I'm going to get you out. I promise." She blinked but didn't speak. He grabbed a towel from the rack, soaked it in the sink, and gently wrapped it around her shoulders. Then he soaked a second cloth and tied it around her mouth like he'd done with himself. "Close your eyes. Okay, stay quiet. Hold on to me." Emma nodded once. Josh scooped her up and cradled her tight against his chest. Her bear remained clenched in her arms. He turned back toward the hallway and froze. The ceiling was sagging. The hallway itself was glowing, alive with fire. There was no clear path back, no way out the way he'd come. He spun, searching the bathroom. A small window above the tub, too small for an adult, but maybe not for Emma. He tried the latch, jammed. He smashed the window with his elbow, knocking out the shards with the back of his arm. Blood trickled down his forearm, but he didn't notice. Wind rushed in through the broken pane, fresh but too far away to save them. Below, he saw a patch of grass, too high to drop safely with Emma, too narrow. Flames licked up along the outer siding. He made a decision. He took the wet towel and wrapped Emma in it fully, tight but breathable. He looked her in the eyes. "You're gonna slide out that window. I'll catch you." She shook her head violently. "I'll be right behind you," he said. He boosted her up carefully, easing her through the frame. Her bear tumbled down first, then her small body followed, inch by inch. She hesitated. He pushed gently. "Go." She slipped out, landing hard but intact in the overgrown flower bed below. Josh turned to follow, then the floor gave a warning groan. He bolted toward the window, throwing one leg up, but the ceiling behind him finally gave way. A beam crashed down. He ducked, barely missing the impact, and dove through the frame just as flame erupted behind him. He landed hard shoulder first, rolling over onto his back. Pain surged through him. His left arm burned where debris had scraped it raw. But he looked up and there was Emma, sitting up, holding the bear, alive. Josh sat up slowly, then stood. The house behind them screamed. Wood splintered, flames burst through the roof. A fireball of heat rippled across the lawn. And then sirens. The fire trucks had arrived. Red lights flashing, tires skidding into position. Firefighters jumped down, barking orders. Water hoses hissed to life. EMTs ran to Sarah and Liam. Josh didn't wait. He carried Emma back across the lawn, away from the wreckage, her arms still wrapped around his neck. When he reached Sarah, he knelt and gently placed Emma beside her mother. "She's okay," he said. Sarah blinked, barely conscious, and pulled both children close. Josh stood again, swaying slightly. His breath came hard. Sweat poured down his face. His shirt was scorched, his arm blistered and bleeding. A firefighter approached. "Sir, you need medical attention now." Josh just nodded vaguely and stepped aside. The crowd that had gathered watched in stunned silence. Some had tears in their eyes. Others whispered things like, "Is that Josh from the garage?" And he went back in twice. A news van had arrived. Cameras swung toward him. Josh turned away. He walked toward the tree line, where the shade was deepest. His legs were heavy now. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by raw pain and something heavier. As he passed the driveway, someone called out, "Wait, what's your name?" Josh didn't answer. He just kept walking, the sound of the fire and sirens behind him, the weight of the moment pressing on his shoulders like a second skin. And in his right hand he still held the wrench he thought he'd dropped. Burnt, blackened, but still solid. He let it fall. This time, for good. The fire was finally out. The structure smoldered long after the flames died, leaving behind a shell of blackened wood and warped metal. The roof had collapsed inward, and parts of the second floor were nothing but ash. Firefighters moved through the wreckage with caution. EMTs tended to the Carter family beneath a cluster of trees, away from the lingering heat. Sarah had regained consciousness. Her arms were wrapped tightly around Emma and Liam. Her face was streaked with soot, her voice hoarse. But when she looked at her children alive, breathing, she broke into tears. Josh stood a few yards away, silent. When Sarah spotted him, she reached out, trembling. "You saved us," she said through her tears. "You saved my babies." Josh gave a small nod. His voice was low. "Just did what had to be done." Others began to gather, neighbors, passers-by, even the grocery store clerk. The small town had woken up fast. Word traveled quickly in Bellbrook. Someone whispered, "That's the guy from the garage." Another added, "He went in twice. I saw it." A local reporter appeared with a camera crew. They moved in fast, microphone raised. "Sir, can you tell us your name?" "What made you go back in?" Josh didn't stop walking. He stepped past them, back toward the edge of the crowd. "Sir, just a word. You're a hero to this town." He didn't even look at the lens. "I'm not," he muttered. "I just heard a kid scream." He walked down the gravel path, leaving the voices behind. By the time the footage aired that night, all they had of him was his back, fading into the distance. Later that evening, after the sun had dipped behind the tree line and the smell of smoke still lingered in the air, Josh sat alone in his garage. The lights were off. The only sound was the occasional hum of cicadas and the ticking of a metal fan cooling down. His left arm was wrapped in gauze. He cleaned the burns as best he could and left the rest to scar. In his lap was the old wrench he'd thought he'd dropped. Somehow, it had ended up back in his garage, left by someone, maybe a firefighter. It was scorched black. The handle blistered. He turned it slowly in his fingers. His hands still trembled, not from the heat but from everything underneath it. The garage smelled of motor oil and gasoline, but beneath that, something deeper. Memory. He closed his eyes. In the darkness, he saw another fire. Iraq. A transport vehicle flipped over by a roadside bomb. The cabin engulfed in flame. A soldier screaming his name. Josh had tried, he'd tried with everything he had. But only one man had made it out that day. And for years, that was all Josh could remember. Not the medal, not the commendation, just the face of the one he couldn't save. Tonight felt different. Tonight, 3 people had made it out. For the first time in a long while, the guilt loosened its grip just slightly. It didn't vanish, but it shifted, made room for something else. Relief, not peace, but maybe the beginning of it. A week passed. The town settled back into its rhythm, though the Carter home remained cordoned off behind yellow tape. Local businesses started a fund to help the family rebuild. Kids left flowers and stuffed animals at the fence. Josh kept working in his garage. He didn't speak of the fire, didn't take calls. When someone knocked on his door, he let it ring out. Until one morning, a letter slid under the garage door. Just 3 words in crayon. Thank you. Josh. Beneath it, a drawing Emma's. Unmistakable. A little girl, a tall man, and a brown bear standing in front of a blazing house, all holding hands. He taped it to the wall beside his workbench. That weekend, Bellbrook held a gathering at the town park. Nothing fancy, just a few folding chairs, some lemonade, and a makeshift stage near the fountain. Sarah spoke first. She held Liam in one arm, Emma standing beside her. Her voice cracked, but she didn't stop. He didn't hesitate. Not once. He didn't ask for permission or praise. He just heard my children and moved. She looked out over the crowd. We call people heroes all the time, but Josh, he saved us. He gave me back my family. Applause followed, but not from Josh. He stood in the back, arms crossed, head lowered, hidden beneath the brim of an old ball cap. When Emma walked across the stage holding a small picture frame, the crowd parted quietly. She found him near the oak tree and held it up. It was another drawing this time. Just a teddy bear, with a heart in the middle, and a simple line underneath. Thank you for being brave. Josh crouched beside her. I don't feel brave, he whispered. Emma shrugged. You didn't run. He smiled barely and took the frame with both hands. Later, someone asked if he wanted to speak. Josh declined. He only said one thing, loud enough for Sarah and her kids to hear. I'm just glad they're safe. Then he left, before the cameras came back. That night, back in the garage, Josh pinned Emma's new drawing beside the first. He looked at them both, then at the scars forming on his forearm. He didn't need anyone to call him a hero. He just needed to keep showing up. And he would, quietly, always. It was late in the evening when Josh sat alone in his garage, the hum of Texas cicadas filling the background like a quiet radio. The light overhead buzzed softly, casting a yellow glow on the wall, where 2 drawings now hung side by side. One was crayon, the other pencil, both drawn by a 7-year-old girl who had every reason not to be here. Josh stared at them in silence. For years, he'd lived in retreat away from noise, away from people, away from himself. After the war, silence felt safer. It was easier to be nobody, easier to forget what he hadn't done. But something shifted that day in the fire, not just in the heat or the smoke or the chaos, but in him. He didn't feel like a soldier anymore. He didn't want to be one. But maybe he didn't have to disappear either. Maybe courage wasn't about war. Maybe it was about what came after. He started small. He offered to fix Sarah's car again, free of charge. She insisted on baking him something in return. This time, he accepted. He let Emma and Liam play in his yard on weekends. They brought sidewalk chalk and turned his driveway into a patchwork of suns and stars and silly monsters. Josh never said much, but he always watched smiling quietly behind the window screen. Neighbors who once only waved from a distance now stopped to say hello. Josh didn't retreat. Sometimes he even answered. No one called him a hero to his face anymore, and he was glad for that. One Sunday, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in long streaks of gold, Josh stood in his yard with a wrench in one hand and grease on the other. Across the street, the Carter house stood tall again, fresh paint, new windows, life slowly coming back. That's when Emma ran over. Her hair bounced as she sprinted across the lawn, holding something small and colorful in her hand. She stopped in front of him, catching her breath. I made you this, she said, holding it out. A bracelet, woven yarn, clumsy knots, bright with red and blue. Josh looked at it like it was the most fragile thing in the world. He knelt down and let her slide it onto his wrist. It fit just right. "Thanks, kid," he whispered. Emma smiled and ran back home, barefoot in the grass. Josh stood still for a long moment, his fingers brushing the bracelet like a reminder. Then he turned back toward the garage, back to the bolts, the grease, the quiet work. But now, every time he reached out to fix something, a little thread of red and blue reminded him he hadn't disappeared. He just started over, and maybe that was enough.